Workers have a right to organize. Now, some may disagree as to whether the protections for workers who choose to organize should also apply to workers who choose not to organize. That's my position, but examining this nuance is not an issue here. The title of today's hearing is "No Company is Above the Law, the Need to End Illegal Union Busting at Starbucks." Now, that clearly presumes that Mr. Schultz and his former employee are guilty before the allegations are fully investigated. The title suggests that this hearing is not a good faith effort to get at the facts. It's a smear campaign against an individual and a company based upon allegations that everyone knows are still under litigation. I am not here to defend Starbucks. I have my own questions about the alleged misconduct, and the law should be followed and upheld. I agree with the chair, no one is above the law. But let's not kid ourselves. This is not a fair and impartial hearing. Now, it's not surprising that Mr. Schultz was reluctant to testify. When the majority is using the title of the hearing to slander the witness we're asking to testify, it sends a signal. The majority points to claims of Starbucks misconduct filed at the National Labor Relations Board to justify today's hearing. These allegations should be addressed and they should be investigated, period. But it would be malpractice for this committee to not also acknowledge that NLRB is currently facing its own credibility crisis. The NLRB confirmed there are 4 separate allegations of NLRB employee interference, 3 in which the employer was Starbucks, pending before the board. It begs the question, are NLRB employees weaponizing the agency against American employers to benefit politically connected labor unions? The National Labor Relations Act was passed to provide an unbiased framework to review disputes between employers and employees. The NLRB carries out the law and is required to protect the rights of all parties in a labor dispute, not put their thumb on the scale in favor of unions. But that is not what we appear to be seeing in practice. An NLRB hearing officer recently substantiated reports of voting irregularities in a union election at a Starbucks in Kansas that could potentially elevate to the level of misconduct by NLRB employees. This includes NLRB staff providing duplicate ballots, supplying union organizers with confidential voter information, providing voter accommodations to employees selected by the union without offering them to all employees. Regardless of the outcome, these actions are in direct violation of federal law and NLRB written guidelines. Now today, we'll hear from former Congressman Bradley Byrne. He is representing the brave whistleblower who brought this misconduct and weaponization of the agency to light. He'll be able to provide more insight into how the NLRB is operating in violation of its own practices and a procedure in a way which favors labor unions. Let's be clear, and one more time, workers have a legal right to unionize. Companies cannot break the law to prevent unionization. Similarly, unions should not be allowed to intimidate workers into unionizing through coercion or by banning secret ballot elections, which the Supreme Court has stated, quote, indeed the preferred, end quote, method to gauge worker support of unionization. This is a conversation this committee can have and will continue to have. But the bottom line is that a federal agency has no right to break the law to advance a political agenda. And this should be something that our committee investigates on a bipartisan basis. If the committee is going to properly investigate concerns over labor relations at Starbucks, we should also investigate alleged misconduct of the agency that sought to influence the union representation process. At last week's hearing, I said we should thoughtfully examine legitimate policy issues, not hold show trials for public shaming. Today looks like more of what we saw last week. There are important bipartisan things the committee needs to accomplish. We need to work together on real solutions to issues facing American families, like the high cost of prescription drugs, getting Americans back to work, driving down inflation that is choking economic growth. Instead, we put CEOs on the dock, but instead of a cage in which the prisoner was formerly kept, is a desk in front of the committee where a judgment has already been made. Thank you, and I look forward to today's